Thank you for joining us.
Many thanks.
Many thanks. So, first overall question, thinking about the world now, not just South Africa, do you think the world is suffering from a dearth of leadership in every country you look?
I think the task of leadership is getting more and more complex there, because we live in a very complex world. A lot of innovation, a lot of change which people can't cope with. So you're right. I mean, there are more and more calls for leadership, and it is challenge. And I mean, you take this country at the moment, South Africa, it's got a tremendous amount of potential and so forth there. But the one thing that it needs is talent, and if it's going to unlock that potential, it's going to need strong leadership. We had Cyril Ramaphosa on one of our advisory councils. I met him about 15 years ago. Very, very smart guy, but he's in a complex situation. So leadership is indeed complex.
I mean, you had him in one of your programs at INSEAD.
Well, it was a special advisory council there. Very smart individual.
Yeah, and how did you rate him? Because I mean, every time you pick up a newspaper or read social media, people are saying, "Oh no, he's not the leader we want. He's not." How did you assess him?
I mean, there were about 15 people. I remember about 15 years ago, there were about 15 people there, and he stuck out among all of those other people. The topic we were discussing at that time, because I was responsible for leadership and management development a few years earlier on at Royal Dutch Shell. So I learned some things from the oil industry. And this guy knew it all and so forth there, and I remember he had very thoughtful observations.
And you weren't too surprised when you saw he became our president?
Well, I was very happy, yes.
But how much more difficult is it in the 21st century to get leaders in general? Because there's a case in point, and even the same with Mandela. I mean, a lot of people would have followed Mandela to hell, but now you look at it now, people are saying, oh, but Mandela didn't do this, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, he didn't sort this out. People are a lot more critical.
Well, I think that's what I mean by the complexity of leadership there. I mean, with more and more democracy, people have the right to vote, to express their views. With social media, which is having a big impact, I mean, misinterpretations of things kind of spread around very quickly. So it makes the task of leadership extremely difficult indeed. I mean, I've always believed that one of the major problems of leaders there is that they spend too much time telling other people what to do, there, rather than freeing people up. And you've got take South Africa, you've got some big, big challenges to get this country going in terms of educational reform. My deep passion here is you've got, 26% unemployment, unofficially, it's 60%. And why? It's because after 1994, vocational education got, let's just move from leadership. It's not just leaders, you need jobs for people, vocational education. We used to think of this as butchers and bakers and plumbers and all of that low-level stuff and so forth there. And unfortunately, in 1994, it all got killed. Now, what vocational education is about hospital technicians and robotics technicians and so forth there. We've got to revive vocational education in this country and other African countries to get people jobs and to get people prosperity. Problem is, all over the world today, everybody wants to go to university. You fill up your head with things and so forth, but unless you go out with some expertise, something that you can do, very difficult to find a job. So what people have got to, we've got to reinvent our systems, and I think Cyril Ramaphosa is smart enough to know that. We've had a group of businessmen, about 75 people working on this for a year in South Africa, and it's almost there. You know what? Take Switzerland as a country. Switzerland is one of the most prosperous countries in the world. It's the most innovative country in the world. Now look at the educational system in Switzerland. You know what? 7.5 people out of 10, they don't go the university route. At age 15, they go to a vocational school where they're going to learn something which is doable, something which is going to get them a job, working 2 days a week and so forth there. And then they may go on to university at a later stage. That dual system is something that South Africa and other African countries have got to reinvent.
Is it not, I mean, finally, very briefly, is it not time for this continent to have a look at what it teaches at universities. It's all very well to treat Greek and Latin, and the other day a young man here said he was going to study classics, and I said, why? And he said, no, it's good for my mind, etc. But shouldn't we be thinking of teaching people to do things more than...
I think you're absolutely right. For most people, there will still be some people, a small group of people, who benefit from mind-broadening things. That assumes that they're very, very fast learners and they can learn the technical expertise stuff very quickly. But we need to find jobs for the many people who are out of a job at the moment. And that requires something technical, vocational, doable. Yeah.